Yeah.
You're good.
Personally, I believe that climate change, it's been a problem for what, the past 50 years? It's caused a lot of damage. But in the past thousands of years that I believe the Earth's been around, it hasn't been much problem. But as industry sparked, and industry sparked the climate change theory, we see that technology is also advancing, which means technology, it's going to continue with climate change, and it's going to parallel to climate change, and then it'll bring it down once our technology is smart enough to take care of it, which means we don't need to put much effort, like a lot of effort, but effort can always be there. Too much effort would be too much spending, and we don't need to do that.
Okay. Well, personally, I think that climate change is the most important issue facing us today. It is true that the Earth's climate has been changing on its own due to natural causes like volcanoes and other things like that. But if you look at the data, the problem is anthropogenic climate change, which is climate change that's been accelerated by humans, which peaked and started peaking around the start of the Industrial Revolution, when we started burning fossil fuels and pumping carbon dioxide in the atmosphere. And it's only gone up with automobiles and everything else. Now, it is true that technology is going to progress enough to where we can, combat this pretty easily, most likely. But the problem is, the way things are going, we're not doing any research into those technologies, which would be things like renewable resources, solar and things like that, that don't emit any carbon dioxide in the atmosphere. And so if we don't start doing that, then we're going to run out of time, and it's going to be too difficult with sea levels rising from the ice caps melting and the temperature increasing too much. And the way things are going with politicians in power right now, not much is being done to address it, especially with the Republican Party in power.
I mean, I believe that you have a very valid point that no research is being put into it, basically. But I believe a $1 trillion deal with science organizations to combat it is a little too much. I believe if we put a few $1 billion into it and we start researching it, it'll slowly progress to where once the climate change gets too bad, we can always combat it and then bring it back down. I also believe that the temperature is not raising to the point where we will be all extinct in a few years. I think we have enough time to take care of it as a minor issue.
Well, the problem with taking care of it as a minor issue is that that process has not been started yet. And it could be a minor issue if we put enough money and attention into it. Maybe $1 trillion is minor spending in this case. Maybe that's what we need to do. You have to look at objectively how much money needs to be spent, because if you don't pay attention to this issue and it is as bad as the scientific community says it is, then money's not going to be the most important of our issues.
Say I were elected as president, I would like to meet with some experts of climate change, and I would be very open with settling a deal that would not reach $1 trillion, but I'm okay with spending a partial few $1 billion into understanding climate change, understanding how long they believe we have, and going on with that, and that would decide how much we put into it.
And if I were elected as president, I would be willing to spend as much money as deemed necessary and planned out and measured out to be necessary to address the issue as much as needed by the scientific community, as I say.
I mean, personally, hold on. I do believe that the Republican Party in our first 2 years of office, following the Democratic Party, we have brought down the African American, the Asian, the Hispanic, and all unemployment in general down to an all-time low, regardless of COVID-19. And I also believe that poverty has also been dropped down, I think, to 30, I don't know, something percent. And I believe that the Republican Party's plan to bring all jobs possible back to America, just like ending the Paris Climate Accord, part of that is all doing well, and I think bringing jobs back to America is helping poverty and it's helping unemployment, and to keep doing what we're doing is exactly what we need to do.
Okay, a couple points. First of all, unemployment because of the current coronavirus pandemic is actually at a lower percentage than it was during the Great Depression. First of all. Second of all, the unemployment drop and economic growth that you mentioned actually started during the Obama administration and has continued on the same rate of change through the Trump administration after the recession that was started under the Republican President George W. Bush. And I'd like to ask, what do you think is the cause of American jobs being lost to countries like China and Mexico? What has caused that?
I think that's completely outsourcing by private organizations that find it cheaper and easier to do it outside of the country, and that's taking jobs away from America. And I think that as much as Republican Party deregulates, I think that it should be regulated how much jobs are outsourced, because made in America.
So how does a party, and how would you yourself, I guess, propose stopping this outsourcing and prioritizing American industry over outsourcing American jobs to China and India and the likes?
I think an executive agency should be overseeing and regulating how much private corporations and industries are to be outsourcing jobs, and at what rate is it being outsourced instead of being brought back in, and I think that it should be stopped.
The issue, of course, with that is that these corporations can simply change their headquarters to another country.
Then I think that they should be tariffed. If they're going to move their entire industry out of the country, then a tariff should be placed on their commodities.
So you propose placing a tariff on any corporation that leaves the United States to start its headquarters in another country?
Yes.
Okay. First, I think we agree that outsourcing to other countries for cheap labor is a problem, especially in cases like today in China when they have suspected slave labor in place by companies like Nike. But I don't think the solution is trying to find every company that does this and placing a tariff on them. Things like that almost always are easily avoided by whatever corporation. We've tried things like that before in the past and it's never worked. I think in Europe, in European countries, many European countries have what's called a value-added tax, which is a tax on each phase of production for a good. So say you're making a t-shirt, each step, getting the cloth and printing whatever design on it, things like that, each of those gets taxed, and you pay that at the end to the producer. And so this, you can scale it on different commodities. So say things like food and diapers, things like that would be exempt. But luxury goods that typically wealthier people would be purchasing, you would tax that higher. And so what this does is it becomes impossible for companies like Amazon, which, fun fact, paid $0 in corporate taxes in 2017 just by exploiting the US tax code. They either pay this tax or they stop doing business in the United States. And so I think that eliminates some of the benefits of outsourcing jobs just because of the way the tax system works. There's no benefit to having your workers work in a different country because you're still having to pay the same amount of taxes. The next topic on the list is just the word gun.
Gun, how you feel about, how does this make you feel?
So gun. All Americans have an unalienable right to own a firearm if they so choose, but there have to be certain restrictions in place to make sure that certain dangerous individuals cannot own that firearm, and certain restrictions on the type of firearms owned to make things like the uptick in mass shootings harder to happen.
If you choose that you should have a gun, then there is nothing that should stop you from having a gun, because that is your own personal freedom, and everybody should have their own freedom.
So I ask, what do you think, or I guess your party thinks, what does your party think is the main cause of the recent rise in mass shootings, particularly in schools, in the recent years since the 1990s?
I think that regards depression, and I think that regards causes of socialization that have not worked out in schools, lots of bullying that hasn't been attended to.
And I do think that school shootings, guns are not the primary problem with school shootings, but I do think that it is a multifaceted issue, and you do have to have the conversation about making it more difficult for people who would go and carry out these things, to make it more difficult at least for them to obtain these guns.
See, I see it as anyone that is determined enough to be a part of a mass shooting, such as school shootings, they will find a way, regardless of laws or rules in place. People are willing to break laws all the time to cause harm to others. So if there is a gun law put into place that restricts many people from having guns without background checks or anything, they will find a way to get a gun no matter what. So if a law is put into place, the mass shootings will continue, but people's freedom and people's legal ability to defend themselves in the event of a shooting is taken down, which means people's freedoms are gone and shootings are still there.